Why hello there, I'm sure none of you were expecting this video. So for a bit of backstory, since 2023, I've traditionally made videos going over the worst movies of the year. I did it for 2023, I did it for 2024, and I did it for 2025. For 2025 specifically, I had planned on making a best movies video to go along with the worst movies video for the first time. The following movies would have been on the list. Number 10, Roofman. Number 9, The Running Man. Number 8, F1. Number 7, Zootopia 2. Number 6, Eternity. Number 5, How to Train Your Dragon. Yeah, I know, shut up about it, okay? Number 4, Marty Supreme. Number 3, Superman. Number 2, Sinners. Number 1, One Battle After Another. As with the worst movies lists that I've put out, I have a rule where if I haven't seen a certain movie, I can't put it on the list. Lots of times, there's a critically panned movie that I unfortunately cannot go over simply because I have never seen it, and it would have been the same thing with this best movies list. This is the reason why The Running Man is on this list, but not Sentimental Value or No Other Choice or Bugonia. Yeah, it has to be Bugonia. I don't know how you're supposed to pronounce that. I haven't seen any of these movies, okay? Simple as that. I know The Running Man isn't top 10 material. Even people who liked it wouldn't consider it top 10 material. Listen, honey, don't put too much thought into an unfinished video, okay? I am not sorry for or ashamed of having How to Train Your Dragon on the list, though. If you get mad at me for putting How to Train Your Dragon on this list, while completely ignoring the 6 original movies that are also on this list, then I'm afraid you don't actually care about original movies, bro chacho. Let's not be performative, okay? Are you really gonna prioritize the fact that there is one remake on this list over the fact that there are 3 original movies ranked above it? Exactly. That's what I thought. I managed to record both the Roofman and Running Man segments, and I was in the middle of recording the F1 segment when I decided not to go forward with this video for several reasons. For one thing, the worst movies of 2025 video turned out to be a big video, and I knew this best movies of 2025 video would have turned out similarly big. I didn't want to overwhelm myself with 2 large-scale videos back to back. I kept thinking about the worst movies of 2024 video and how that video was a nightmare to make, not only because of its scale, but also because of my mental health at the time. I was severely demotivated a lot of times when it came to working on this video. I started working on the video in January, understandably so, and then the full video wouldn't come out until April. Way too late for this kind of video to be coming out in, if you ask me. The worst movies of 2025 video was thankfully much easier to work on, but I looked at the production of that 2024 video as something that I didn't want to experience again, and I felt that scrapping the best movies video would have helped out with that. On the topic of my mental health, I spent the beginning of 2026 largely thinking about how awful 2025 was for me, how it was hard for me to be excited about the new year when there was an entire year of my life that was just wasted, and I didn't feel all that motivated to make the best movies video because of that. I probably could have made this video from the perspective of, hey, 2025 was an abysmal year, year, but there were good things in it. Here's a reminder that there were a few bright spots here and there in 2025, but I don't know. I just didn't feel like doing that. I didn't feel like prioritizing the fact that Disney had put out their first good animated movie in a long time in 2025 over the fact that I attempted to go away forever several times in 2025. Let's put it that way. I apologize for having this take a really sudden dark turn, but this is stuff that I think is important to understand when it comes to why I scrapped this video. I just wanted to do the worst movies video and then move on to other videos. That's it. Very recently, I found out that I had never actually deleted the recordings made for the Roofman and Running Man segments. I somehow forgot to delete them when I decided to scrap the best movies video. I tend to make it a tradition whenever I scrap a video, I finish what I had made of it and then I upload it for y'all to enjoy. I do this not only to give my audience an idea of what could have been for the video, but also because I don't want what was made of the video to go to waste. I don't want to delete what was made of the video and move on. I want what was made of the video to be archived and preserved in some way. Although I had recorded the segments for these two movies, I had never gotten around to editing them at all, and so I've decided to take time out of my day to edit these segments for a video that was scrapped all the way back at the very beginning of this year. You're welcome. At one point, I had planned on making proper reviews for all of these movies, well, except for How to Train Your Dragon, since I already made a review of it shortly after it came out, but I wanted to review these remaining 9 movies just to avenge this video, just so that this video could still technically exist in some way. That obviously ended up never happening. I mean, can you really blame me? Why waste time reviewing Marty Supreme or One Battle After Another when I could instead be reviewing these movies right here? I do want to make proper reviews for some of these movies in the future. Not all of them, mind you. I wanted to review all of these movies initially, but now I only want to focus on a select few movies on this list. I'm not sure what I could be able to say about the big 3 over here, Sinners, One Battle After Another, and Marty Supreme, that hasn't already been said by tons of other people, especially since we're so far into 2026. A video going over why Sinners is an amazing movie coming out in August of 2026 just doesn't hit the same, you know? I don't know how to describe it, that's just the vibe that I get. That being said, though, I still want to make proper reviews for most of the movies covered on this list at some point, and that includes these 2 movies that I recorded their segments for, Roofman and The Running Man. I do want to go into more detail about why I think these are good movies than what you end up getting in this unfinished video, this unfinished best movies video. I do want to make a proper video on Roofman and a proper video on The Running Man, going into greater detail as to why I like these movies. I don't know when these videos will ever happen, but I can assure you they will happen at some point. Now that I've gotten that out of the way, I hope y'all are able to enjoy what was made of this top 10 best movies of 2025 video. Let us begin. I have had an incredibly rough 2025, something that I've made very clear in my last couple of videos, and yet, ironically enough, this was the first time that I ever wanted to also make a best movies list in addition to a worst movies list. I've already knocked out the worst movies, now it's time to focus on the best movies. As I've mentioned before at the beginning of the worst movies of 2025 video, I thought 2025 was actually a much better year for movies than 2024. I say that while also acknowledging that there were many great movies that came out in 2024, but there were also an unusually large amount of bad movies in 2024. And even though 2025 obviously had bad movies, if there were no bad movies in 2025, well, I wouldn't have made 3 videos going over the worst movies of the year. Even with that in mind, it felt overall the good movies outweighed the bad movies. And so in today's video, I'm gonna go over my personal picks for the top 10 best movies of 2025. Now, right off the bat, I'm gonna clarify that this is my list and it is my opinion, okay? If you want to get your panties in a twist over the fact that there are no art house movies about depression or abuse or whatever on this list, well, be my guest, but do keep in mind that this is my list, okay? Instead of complaining about the movies that are on my list, how about you go make your own best movies of 2025 list and fill it with as many 5-hour long art house movies about depression and abuse as your heart desires. That sound fair? And also, as always, if there's a movie that's not on the list or in the honorable mentions, there's a very high chance that I didn't watch the movie, and so therefore I cannot put it on the list or in the honorable mentions. To give you an example, Neza 2 will not be on this list. The highest grossing movie of 2025 and the highest grossing animated movie of all time, and I haven't watched it. I don't doubt the possibility that it is indeed a great movie, but because I haven't watched it, I cannot put it on the list proper, nor can I put it as an honorable mention. It's just as fair as that. I'm sure it's a great movie, but I cannot include it on this list because I've never seen it. And speaking of which, allow me to briefly go over the honorable mentions for the best movies of 2025. Ballerina from the world of John Wick, Weapons, Novocaine, Caught Stealing, Thunderbolts, The Fantastic Four, First Steps, Mickey 17, The Naked Gun, and The Bad Guys 2. I would love to go into detail about these movies, but, I already know this is going to be a pretty long list, so I don't want to make it even longer by going over movies that, I thought these were good, maybe even great movies, but, they're not top 10 of the year, personally, for me. And so with all of that said, let us proceed forward with the list proper. Here are 10 movies that helped me not myself in 2025. These are the top 10 best movies of 2025. Let us begin. Number 10 is a movie that I thought looked interesting from the trailers, but I wasn't expecting it to be anything amazing. However, it completely blew me away with how good it turned out to be. I think this is one of the most underrated movies of 2025 easily. It's a shame there aren't that many best movies of 2025 lists that will include this movie in it, but I don't care. It's on my list. That's all that matters. I'm giving this underrated gem the spotlight it deserves. Number 10 is Roofman. Roofman is a movie that is based on a true but also incredibly bizarre and absurd story. The movie follows Jeffrey Manchester, played by Channing Tatum, a thief known to the public as Roofman, someone who would rob several different places, including a McDonald's. He would rob several different McDonald's. The movie starts off with him robbing a McDonald's, and as he's attending his daughter's birthday party one day, he gets caught and he gets sent to prison, and then he manages to escape from the prison, and he hides inside of a Toys R Us. He manages to sneak in while the store is closed at night. He tampers with the cameras in the Toys R Us, so it's like he's able to walk around freely in the stores without worrying about the cameras. During the night, he walks around freely in the store, and then during the day, he hides inside of this I don't know what you call this circle area that no one would ever expect him to be in there. No one would ever expect to find him there. Neither the employees nor the customers. That's where he spends during the day. And then during the night, he freely roams around the Toys R Us. And then at one point in the movie, he meets Leigh Wainscott, an employee at the Toys R Us that he's hiding in, played by Kirsten Dunst. And she starts hanging out with him, unaware that he's a wanted fugitive and that he's been hiding out where she works. Throughout the movie, Jeffrey and Leigh get much closer together. Leigh is a single mother with 2 daughters, and so Jeffrey meets them and slowly becomes something of a father figure for them. And while all of this is happening, he's also trying to get a new identity. He's trying to, he has someone that's like trying to create a new ID for him, allowing for him to move somewhere far away from his hometown in an attempt to start a new life. And then by the end of the movie, Leigh finds out who Jeffrey actually is. She finds out about the Roofman, and he gets caught and arrested once again. And this time, though, he accepts the fact that he will spend the rest of his life in prison. Now, I personally feel the marketing for this movie didn't do it justice. You look at the posters for this movie, you look at the trailers for this movie, and you'd think this would be a fun, wacky comedy about a guy who hides inside of a Toys R Us without anyone knowing about it. And although there are comedic moments in the movie, although there are moments where it's like, haha, this guy is hiding inside of a Toys R Us without the employees or customers knowing about it, this movie is a lot more dramatic than I expected. I didn't go into this expecting it to be a drama, but lo and behold, it ended up being a drama. It's still a comedy, don't get me wrong. There are funny moments, but it's a comedy drama. It's not like a pure 100% comedy. And even if it is a comedy drama, there is a greater focus on drama than comedy. The movie is not 100% haha, the wacky shenanigans ensue with this thief hiding inside of a Toys R Us or anything like that. This movie had a very low budget of $19 million, and it made $34 million at the box office. I don't know if it can be classified as a success or an underperformance or a flop or even a bomb. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what like the logistics of like box office, like how it works, but I feel like the fact that the movie wasn't as comedic as the marketing made it out to be probably disappointed some people. I'm sure some people wanted to go and see this expecting a funny, wacky, silly comedy about a guy who hides inside of a Toys R Us, and then they're disappointed that the movie ended up being a lot more dramatic instead, focusing more on Jeffrey and his relationship with this woman, this employee. And, you know, I understand that, you know, false advertising and all that, but I must say, it didn't disappoint me, though. And this is when I say it might disappoint some people. It might have disappointed some people. I'm not saying that like, oh, people hate this movie. It's like this was a hated movie. No, this movie got great reviews. You go on like Letterboxd, Rotten Tomatoes, IMDb. It's like generally agreed that this is a good movie. So it's not like this was like a poorly received movie that I personally thought was great or anything like that. I found myself highly invested in what was going on. Maybe it's because of Channing Tatum's great acting, but it's surprisingly really easy to root for Jeffrey for most of the movie, even if he is a criminal. It's like you almost forget that this character is a wanted fugitive. You almost forget that like he's running away from the law. You want to see him get the girl and or get away with everything. You want to see him get a happy ending with or without Leigh and her daughters. Of course, though, if he ended up never getting caught, if he got away with everything, then the movie likely wouldn't exist, and there's a part of me that feels like the ending would be kind of anticlimactic if it turned out that way. The movie's 2004 setting, I think, also adds to the movie for me. I couldn't help but feel strangely nostalgic while watching this. There are several scenes throughout the movie where Jeffrey steals several PS2 games from Toys R Us, and he sells them to a pawn shop for money, and you could see like among the games that he's selling, you could see like GTA Vice City and The Simpsons Hit and Run among other games, and you know, I don't know, it just made me feel nostalgic. The Toys R Us setting as well, I think also adds to it heavily, the setting of Toys R Us. The whole movie just has this nostalgic early 2000s vibe to it. I don't think it was like this was intentional. Again, this movie is based on a true story. I don't think it was like intentional to have it be like, yeah, this is, you know, it's supposed to invoke nostalgia for the people watching it, but it felt nostalgic to me, and I think that's a massive plus for the movie. I didn't go into this expecting to feel nostalgic for the early 2000s, for 2004, and yet I did feel weirdly nostalgic for 2004 while watching this movie. Roofman is easily one of the most underrated movies of the year. I could see this becoming a cult classic in the nearby future. It is a very absurd but also very unique and interesting story, made even more absurd, unique, and interesting by the fact that it's based on a true story. Now, like with many based on a true story movies, I don't doubt the possibility that certain things from this movie didn't actually happen in real life. I'm sure there were several things that were changed or exaggerated or added into the movie to be a lot more interesting than they were in real life, but accurate or not, I found this to be a great movie. Among the many different movies that we got in 2025, I think this movie should be acknowledged as one of the hidden gems of the year. I really think y'all should watch this movie. I recommend it. It's not much of a comedy. It is a comedy, but it's not as much of a comedy as the marketing made it out to be, and I could see that being a turnoff for some people, but generally I didn't find it to be a turnoff at all. The fact that the movie's a lot more dramatic than I expected. I found myself highly invested in the story of this movie, and again, it does give off that like nostalgic feel because of its 2004 setting, which most likely that wasn't intentional. I don't think they made this with the intent of like having people feel nostalgic, but I don't know, I felt nostalgic watching this for 2004, so I gotta bring that up as a plus. I gotta bring that up as a positive. And so, with that said, let's move on to number 9. Number 9 is a movie that bombed at the box office. A movie that will go down as one of the biggest box office bombs of the year. And if you ask me, this movie did not deserve to bomb. It's not a perfect movie. There are problems with it, but ultimately, I think it deserved much better. Number 9 is The Running Man. Now, I have to clarify something. This movie didn't deserve to bomb. I don't think it deserved to bomb, but I can also understand why it bombed. This movie had a budget of $110 million, and it only made $68 million at the box office. Yikes. In all fairness, though, this movie is based on a fairly niche Stephen King book from 1982, which was later adapted into an also pretty niche Arnold Schwarzenegger movie in 1987. Now, I've never read the original book, nor have I seen the 1987 movie, but I do know that they are both very niche. You know, everyone goes on about Stephen King and how he's a legend. You know, you don't really see anyone bring up The Running Man as one of his most famous iconic books, and it's the same thing with the movie. Like, when you think of 80s cinema, you think of Star Wars The Empire Strikes Back, you think of Back to the Future, you think of The Terminator, you think of that sort of thing. You don't think of The Running Man. The Running Man is significantly more niche than any of those movies. You know, so it's like a movie like this, based on such niche source material, and coming out shortly before Wicked for Good and Zootopia 2, two movies that were most definitely inevitably going to be much bigger than this movie, was unlikely to be all that successful. And I feel like the dystopian setting of the movie may be another reason as to why the movie failed. I don't think audiences wanted to see a movie about a future where America sucks, while America currently sucks right now. Even with all of that in mind, though, I can't help but think that this movie deserved better, because I personally had a great time watching it. This movie focuses on Ben Richards, played by Glenn Powell, a man with a wife and daughter. The daughter is like a baby and she's sick. She has like an infection, a disease. I don't know what it was. And because they're poor, because he and his wife are poor, they don't have any money at all to get her treatment or anything like that, any sort of like medical help for her. And so, in a desperate act to make money money for his sick daughter, Ben ends up joining the Running Man game show. The idea of the Running Man is 3 contestants spend the next 30 days getting hunted down by the entire nation. And if they are able to survive the 30 days, they end up getting a lot of money. I don't remember the exact amount of money, but it was like a lot of money. In an act of desperation, Ben ends up joining the Running Man, alongside 2 other contestants who both end up dying. The former dies fairly early on into the movie, and the latter dies midway through into the movie. As the movie progresses forward, you have more people showing support for Ben, people who believe like Ben should survive. And then it's like the TV network that airs the Running Man. I don't remember the name of it. It's like they're evil. They're like the villains of the movie. Not really all that surprising. And then slowly as the movie progresses forward, Ben finds out, like he learns more about the very exploitative nature of the Running Man and this TV network. There's like this whole thing where they try to rig Ben's longtime survival in the Running Man. Like I believe the whole thing is like he's the longest surviving contestant in the Running Man. And so they want to try and like have like tons of different spin-off shows and whatever focusing on Ben, to which he refuses. And then he starts learning more about the TV network being like corrupt and evil and whatnot. You know, very like basic dystopian stuff that we've seen in tons of other dystopian media. Stuff that isn't really as hard-hitting as it should be, considering the fact that, you know, this is exactly how it is right now in the real world. And so it's not as like shocking or hard-hitting seeing this stuff in a movie. He tries to expose the truth of this TV network to the people watching the Running Man, and instead he's unable to. Like the head of the TV network or whatever, played by Josh Brolin, he would like manipulate the footage to have like Ben say something else or do something else. Deep fakes, I guess you could say, like AI videos or whatever, in an attempt to prevent viewers from knowing the truth. Now, as I mentioned before, this movie is not perfect. Do I like this movie? Yeah, I do. Did I have a great time watching this movie? Yeah, I did. Do I think this movie deserved to bomb? No, I don't think it deserved to bomb. I can understand why it bombed, but I don't think it deserved to bomb. However, I will acknowledge this movie is not perfect. There are problems with this movie. There are flaws with this movie. For one thing, I do believe the pacing can drag a bit from time to time, particularly in the last quarter of the movie. I think like the last half of the movie would just kind of drag on more and more and more, and it leaves you wondering, like, you know, how much more of the movie is there gonna be. Near the end of the movie, there's like this plot twist that's set up where it's like, I guess they murder Ben's family, like they murder his wife and daughter, and it's like this big emotional moment. And then I guess it turns out, no, they didn't actually murder them. This was like a ploy to make Ben angry, and also to like attract viewers into watching his story. The footage of them murdering his family, it's all like fake AI videos or whatever, deep fakes, whatever. The climax of the movie also largely takes place on this airplane, and I believe there's like this whole thing where like they show like the plane crashing with Ben inside of it, and it makes you think like Ben ended up dying, and then it turns out like the plane crash footage was like manipulated, like AI, and like Ben ended up surviving. It just felt like, you know, it kind of dragged on, honestly, and I thought like it was a shame because I was really invested and interested in what was going on in the movie for the most part, and then like in the last quarter it felt like it just kind of dragged on to the point where it started to get a little bit less interesting. Not to the point where I thought it was a bad movie, but enough for it to be like, you know, yeah, this is slowly getting less good. Not enough for me to remove this from the top 10, but enough for me to acknowledge, yeah, this movie's not perfect. And then as if that wasn't enough, the ending for this movie I found to be incredibly unsatisfying and anticlimactic. Ben ends up showing the truth to like all of the people watching The Running Man, and so everyone's like rioting against the TV network and Josh Brolin Brolin's character. And then there's like a masked figure that like throughout the movie there's like this special elite hunter that's like he wears a mask and whatever, and he's shown to be like a big threat throughout the movie. And then he actually appears himself during like the airplane scene in the last quarter of the film. And then I guess like I think he dies, I'm not sure. And I think this is Ben shooting Josh Brolin's character. And then immediately after that, the credits roll and the movie's over. And I don't know, I just found it to be a very abrupt and anticlimactic ending, which you combine that with the kind of dragging feel of the last quarter of the movie. It's not really a good combination. Besides that though, I generally had a great time watching this movie. I didn't go into this expecting a life-changing work of art, something that'll win a million Oscars. I went into this expecting a fun action movie, and that's what this ended up being for the most part. There are tons of scenes throughout this movie where it's like you have Ben, and then it's like he's trying to find a way to escape the hunters, and it's like it's like edge of your seat. Like, how is he gonna get out of here? How is he gonna get out of this situation? He comes across different people, different characters that help him out in private. You know, it's like a very interesting story. I know this isn't an original movie, but like it is a very interesting story nonetheless. From what I've heard, this is a much more accurate adaptation to the original Running Man book than the 1987 movie. So, you know, that's a plus right there if you love the original Running Man book, but I've never seen either movie. I seem to be in the minority when it comes to like how much I enjoyed this movie. I will acknowledge that this movie is not perfect. It has a lot of flaws, but generally I had a great time watching this movie, and I feel like I'm in the minority. I mean, it's not really like, you know, you don't see people say this is like an awful movie, one of the worst movies of the year. The general consensus is that this movie is fine. It's not amazing, but it's not terrible either. And I mean, okay, I'll admit that it's not amazing either, but I had a great time watching it, and you know, that's all that matters. I feel like this movie would have had much better reception. It would have been more successful at the box office, and I would likely have it much lower on the list, like maybe even in the top 5, I don't know, if the third act was much better, because I feel like the third act being just kind of compared to the first 2 acts, it's like, you know, that's what's keeping this up at number 9. I went into this movie expecting a fun action movie, and that's exactly what it gave me for the most part. Even with the kind of okay third act, you know, the good heavily outweighs the bad for me for this movie. I hate the fact that this movie ended up bombing at the box office, but unfortunately there's nothing that I or any of us can do about that. And so when it comes to a movie like this, I think it's very important to remember a movie bombing at the box office does not automatically make it bad, and a movie making a lot of money at the box office does not automatically make it good. Something highest grossing movie of all time, something beautiful but also boring and bloated, something little to no cultural impact, something. Yeah, I think it's safe to say a certain movie will not be on this list, unfortunately. All I'm gonna say is, if this is Edgar Wright's worst movie, then, I mean, that just goes to show how f***ing goated of a director he is. Anyways, with all of that said, let's move on to number 8.